Hello and welcome to the Smashi Business Show. Today is Tuesday, December 9th, 2025, and I'm Ward Ahmed.
And I'm Par Joshi.
And for today's headlines, first up, Gulf sovereign wealth funds are backing Paramount's hostile $108 billion bid for Warner Bros. Discovery. In this new move, and Saudi Arabia and Qatar have unveiled this high-speed rail that is going to link Riyadh and Doha. And finally, Visa has returned to Syria as the new government is pushing to rejoin the global financial system. For the first story of today, Gulf sovereign wealth funds have become the central force behind Paramount's hostile $108 billion takeover attempt for Warner Bros. Discovery. Now, newly released documents are showing that Saudi Arabia's $1 trillion public investment fund and Abu Dhabi's Al Ahmad Holding and Qatar Investment Authority and Jared Kushner's affinity partners are key financial backers of the all-cash offer.
Paramount designed the investment structure so that these foreign partners hold non-voting shares and no board rights, meaning that the transaction would not fall under review by the US Committee on Foreign Investment. This approach contrasts with Netflix's competing proposal, which includes no foreign capital and therefore faces a more straightforward regulatory path.
Now, Kushner's involvement continues a pattern of large-scale deals that are being tied to the Gulf capital. Now, the Wall Street Journal reported that he helped connect Silver Lake with Saudi leadership during discussions to take Electronic Arts private, and Affinity Partners has secured a roughly 5% stake in that $55 billion transaction, now working alongside Silver Lake and the Public Investment Fund.
So that Electronic Arts, the EA deal, marked the first time Kushner's fund appeared in a global technology buyout of such scale. The same Gulf investors now supporting Paramount's bid also played major roles in financing the EA transaction, highlighting a growing alignment between Hollywood deal-making and Middle East sovereign wealth strategies.
And Paramount's leadership says both sides may raise their offers. Now, CEO David Ellison has indicated $30 a share is not necessarily the final price. The takeover fight intensified after Warner Bros. Discovery chose Netflix's offer, prompting Paramount to appeal directly to shareholders as the bidding war enters a very decisive stage. I mean, this is Warner Bros. That we're talking about here.
A very big company which obviously holds a lot of like iconic shows, iconic movies, and in a way it's like these companies buying certain shares of them. It completely even changes the way in which we see movies and also like cinema in general. I think it'll be a part or a time where we'll see everything which is completely shifting towards these digital strategies. And I don't think any of these investments or bid are involving anything to do with, let's say, theaters in general.
Really? You don't think that this is a deal that has something to do with theaters?
No.
Why?
I mean, because of what we've seen largely, and even Netflix's CEO recently in an interview, firstly, I just noticed the fact that whenever he was talking about people and what they want, he referred to the people as not as people, but he referred to people as consumers. So he said something that the consumer wants this, the consumer wants to watch it on this. According to them, like according to the Netflix CEO, every sort of like film or whatever it is, like these projects that they're buying out, the plan is to make it all digital. Which is why a lot of people, even on the internet, are like in a way saying that, okay, maybe like theaters or whatever it is might be on the low, cinemas on the low because of these buying out shares. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do, especially with Warner Brothers being a massive company, which is obviously known for having many iconic films, iconic shows.
Very iconic.
It also
has Game of Thrones. You have Superman, DC Comics. They also own Discovery Plus.
I think
CNN,
HBO as well, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. So like all these like massive shows and everything, it's going to be fully digitalized into one platform, basically a monopoly. That's the goal here for the Netflix, to just get a monopoly.
Look, I think with this entire story part, I think that you're correct in the sense of, that this is not the story about theater and cinema
Yeah, exactly.
that the social media is making it be. Because basically what people are arguing is that if Netflix comes, and we're talking about Netflix here. This
Yeah,
is the
a
Netflix
big-
that is
a
like...
giant.
It is a giant,
giant.
but at the same time part, like this is a Netflix that is always giving us corny shows that we really love. Hey, they're corny, but I watch them.
Yeah,
I love
but,
Emily
like,
in Paris.
yeah.
But, people are afraid because, you have Netflix with all of these, I don't find them cringe, but people say that they are.
And so I think it's mainly also to do with the subscription price than it being cringe. I think if it was like
Yeah.
a decent or reasonable subscription price, and like obviously you have the entire thing of like they might be getting ads or whatever, that's a completely different topic. I think people would not mind the corny shows or like whatever shows are there if the price according to them was reasonable, at least to a monthly basis.
I just think, in this case specifically, the fact that you have Netflix with that kind of production acquiring Warner Bros. Discovery, I understand the fear that people have of, cinema possibly
It's like
being
it's like when you
destroyed.
say it, like okay, you're saying Netflix as a giant, but then in front of them is Warner Brothers and them acquiring Warner Brothers.
No, I think it's impressive that they have the money for that.
Yeah.
But it's also, how you mentioned specifically part that, you don't think that this deal is about theater. I completely agree with you that it's not about theater because of the fact of, obviously we're seeing that Paramount has jumped in and, they've jumped in with more money. We're hearing that it's $108 billion.
These are big studios, that's the thing.
The difference between the Paramount deal and the Netflix deal is that Paramount would also be taking over Discovery Plus. And let me tell you something. Perhaps Warner Bros. Discovery has accepted Netflix's deal and rejected Paramount. But I do think that Paramount has a chance, and I'll tell you why. That point that you said about it not having to do with theater, not having to do with any of that, I don't think that the American government, I don't think that Donald Trump is concerned about theater.
Oh, he's the last person who will.
No, but they're concerned about that control. And
Exactly.
we're seeing that
That's
you have Jared Kushner.
that's the point I was trying to make.
the
They are
son-in-law,
going behind
Donald
the control.
Trump. Exactly.
They want everything within like just that one roof. That okay, we own this. That's
No, I see your point there, and it's fact of...
Which is exactly what I was saying, that, when we look at it in a bigger perspective, when we see Netflix as a giant, it's just, to me, it's just like, it takes me a bit aback because like the competition is not just some small acquired studio which has just been like, brought up like 10 years ago. It's Warner Bros. We're talking about.
No, I agree with you, and I think it's also a
Yeah.
sign part of how things are changing. The fact
Massively.
that streaming has become something that can
It's
generate that much
climbed up
money.
the ranks so much post-COVID.
It has, yes, it has. And it's when we talk, I think, specifically about Jared Kushner. If you don't know Jared Kushner, he is the son-in-law of Donald Trump. And he has been a part of a lot of deals in the Middle East. We saw it very recently in electronic arts, but we also saw it in how he was able to raise $2 billion from Saudi Arabia's public investment fund and I believe Qatar Investment Authority for Affinity Partners. And he was also a part of the Gaza peacemaking, or whatever that is. He was in Israel very recently, but the Kushner name, it is everywhere, and wherever Kushner is, that Trump is also there. So I think just to like back up that point of it's not really about theater. I agree with you because with these deals, and it's maybe it's unfortunate, maybe not everyone likes it, but the government is involved, and we saw that in TikTok.
It's reality.
We saw that in TikTok. TikTok for the longest time ever. What did the U.S. first try to do? They first tried to ban it. And then, out of nowhere, we hear that you have MGX, this tech fund in Abu Dhabi, chaired by His Highness Sheikh Tahnoon, that is going to acquire a 15% stake in it, along with Silver Lake and Oracle. So once again, that is what we're seeing there, and it's that Middle Eastern presence. And I think that specifically with the Middle East part, they're just taking advantage of a really good opportunity. We saw how recently Saudi Arabia, they're launching this like $1 billion Hollywood studio. So, they're on they're on their 2030 goals. But I think with the U.S., it's kind of like this tricky game because...
It's about taking an advantage. Because given the stance that they've always had against the Middle East, I think it's just the fact that they're trying to take the advantage when it comes to, like, let's say, monetary reasons. Which is why even in all these big summits that have happened recently, we are also seeing that the US is participating in them because they know that if they don't tap in the Middle Eastern market, be it in any industry, then they might fall behind, and that's
No,
a fear.
and that is totally agreed. Like, we saw that with Anthropic. The story of Anthropic, it's a crazy one. They have Claude AI, which is absolutely great for research. And basically, there was this leaked memo from Wired that came out part, and it was the Anthropic CEO saying that we cannot walk this line of we can't take money from someone just because they're bad people, just because they're dictators. And then 1 month later, we hear that Anthropic, and I think they raised, $11 billion, and a part of those investors was Qatar Investment Authority.
Yep.
So we're definitely seeing that happening there. But I think with this entire bid, it's just going to be really exciting to play out. I just predict that I think that Donald Trump is going to be in the middle of it all. I think that Netflix has a very high chance
because they have that stronghold as well. Yeah.
But I think with Paramount, I think they're probably going to get Donald Trump's ear because of Jared Kushner being his son-in-law. But just to move on to the second story of the day, Saudi Arabia and Qatar have agreed to jointly develop a high-speed electric rail line that will connect Riyadh and Doha in just 2 hours. Now, the 785-kilometer project announced by the Saudi press agency marks the first rail link of its kind between the two Gulf neighbors and aims to transform regional connectivity.
The railway will run through Hafuf and Dammam, linking King Salman International Airport with Hamad International Airport. Designed to reach speeds of up to 300 kilometers per hour, the line is expected to be completed within 6 years, significantly shortening travel times between the two capitals.
And the agreement was signed in the presence of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Qatar's Emir, His Excellency Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Now, officials say the rail link will support more than 10 million passengers annually and create over 30,000 direct and indirect jobs across both countries once operational.
Saudi authorities project the new connection will add 115 billion, that's 115 billion riyals, or roughly $30.6 billion, to the combined GDP of both nations. The investment reflects a broader effort to strengthen economic ties and deepen cooperation following the full restoration of diplomatic relations in 2021. Now,
bilateral trade between the two countries has surged to $930 million in 2024, a 634% increase from 2021. Now, alongside the rail project, Saudi Arabia and Qatar will also explore collaboration in electricity, renewable energy, and energy efficiency initiatives as part of a wider economic integration plans. I think that when I take a look at this entire story part,
amazing story.
This is a first of its kind rail, but much more than that. Yesterday at Bridge Summit, one of the largest media summits in the world, I was able to have a conversation with Gary Vee, and I was asking him about his immigrant experience, growing up in, I believe, the Soviet Union, now Russia, and going to America. And I asked him about, what are misconceptions that Western people have of the Arab world? And he brought up this one distinction that I think really matters. He said that, America and Europe, they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
They're not the same thing.
They don't get along, yeah.
I don't think that they don't get along.
They're not same. They're very much different in their own ways.
Perhaps their relations are strained, but I bring up that distinction because of the fact of when you see the Gulf, when you see the Middle East, there is this sense of unity that is there.
Yeah.
It's like when you think of the Gulf, you just think of the entire Gulf together.
And I love he said that point because the same thing could even be applied within Europe itself, as to how even though they are that close together, there's a lot of differences between those countries. And same thing between America and Europe. In GCC, you have that, as you said, that sense of unity and that sense of togetherness that, we can achieve one common goal, which is a beautiful
And they
thing.
are doing it.
Yes.
They're actively working together, developing these projects together, and we've seen it in so many examples.
It's not just words. That's the beautiful part of it. It's not just words. They're able to achieve it.
We saw it very recently in, back to Donald Trump again. But if you know Donald Trump, he has the Trump Organization. It's one of the largest real estate companies in the world, and they're really trumping their horn across the Middle East. And listen, we saw it with their projects. The first Trump golf course in Damak. That is there. They're building a Trump Tower here, one in Jeddah, one in Riyadh, and very recently they announced this Trump resort. They announced this new golf course that they're going to be building in Qatar, and I believe they also collaborated. They're trying to build this like Bitcoin mined Maldives resort. And they're collabing together. But my point with that story is what I specifically saw is, and this is in the Jeddah Trump Tower part, is that the company that actually won the contract to build it is a Abu Dhabi-based company.
Yep.
I believe it's called Arabian Construction Company. So I think it's the fact that overlap that we see there, and we see it in more prominent examples. In Syria, we see it in the story of Syria. So after the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime, what essentially happened is we saw Saudi Arabia, we saw Qatar jumping in. First, we saw it with the paying of the joint salaries. So both countries agreed, I believe, to chip in over $80 million across 3 months to pay Syrian government salaries. And they also settled their $15 million World Bank debt.
Yep.
That level, and for me, that's why I brought up that point of that distinction of in the Middle East, we don't see it, and perhaps we don't see it because of the fact that they do operate in that sense, and we saw in the way in which the sanctions were lifted from Syria.
Yep.
It was when Donald Trump was in Saudi Arabia.
He's a massive presence. Like, I think it's almost every week on the show we say it now, almost every day, that he is mentioned. Like, he's like a main character on the show at this point. He's mentioned in every way possible.
Main character is
Like,
so Gen Z of you to say.
He makes things happen. Be it good or bad, he just makes things happen.
Yes, he does. And just moving on, speaking of Syria, Visa is set to resume operations in Syria after more than a decade. Following a new agreement with the country's central bank, the company says it will help implement a roadmap to reintegrate Syria into the global digital economy, marking one of the most significant financial shifts since the fall of the previous regime. Now, Syria, now governed by President Ahmed al-Sharaa, has moved quickly to rebuild financial infrastructure. In June, the country completed its first electronic transfer using the SWIFT system after a 14-year suspension. Now, Visa's return follows the partial lifting of U.S. sanctions after al-Sharaa's meeting with President Trump in Washington.
So Visa says its initial focus will be supporting Syrian financial institutions in establishing a secure payments ecosystem. This includes issuing payment cards, enabling digital wallets, and rolling out global standards such as EMV chips and tokenization. Central Bank Governor Abdul Qadir Husre said that the partnership marks a new chapter of hope and opportunity.
Now, the Syrian government is also working to restore confidence in the national currency. In August, the central bank removed 2 zeros from the pound after it suffered a historic collapse, now losing more than 99% of its value since 2011. The exchange rate now sits near 11,000 pounds to the dollar.
Despite the challenges, international interest is returning. Syria recently held its first major oil and gas exhibition since the change in leadership. Agreements have already been signed with companies including ConocoPhillips, Novitra, Dana Gas, and Qatar's UCC, holding as Damascus attempts to revive investment across critical sectors. And that's a wrap for today.
Yes, that's a wrap for today, everyone.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Smashi Business Show. We didn't have that many stories, but obviously we had very interesting topics to talk about. Obviously, Bridge Summit was mentioned. Wars had gone to the Bridge Summit yesterday. Could you just tell us a little on that?
On Bridge Summit,
Yep.
Honestly, Bridge Summit, it kind of had this own life to it part. It was, there was lots of media people. You had the Semaphore CEO there. You had Gary V there. More to come. Plastia, Anas Bukhash.
Lots
one
of
of the chairmen of
athletes as
Forbes.
well,
Yeah, there's a lot of names there. Priyanka Chopra, Idris Alba. It's really well planned, and I think that it's really interesting to come and see, because I think for me it's and I mentioned this before on the show. creators are not actually respected everywhere, by the way.
Yep.
It's not, listen, it's
Yeah,
not a profession that's respected
exactly,
everywhere, even though it's a profession that
It
has
gives an eye roll
monetized.
to a lot of people.
But it's monetized itself
Yeah.
extremely, but it's not a profession that is respected everywhere. And the fact that the UAE has gone right ahead and has come up with a lot of initiatives to bring it forward. And I think Bridge Summit is one of those initiatives. You know, maybe it's just a place where people meet, but I think to bring all these people together, it's so necessary because that's where you get the collaborations from. Just recently, we saw Mr. Beast.
Yep.
He's like the YouTube king, most followed on YouTube. He partnered with 1 Billion Summit. And basically what it is that I believe you have to film this video doing an act of kindness and you have to send it in. And if you win, you get to go with Mr. Beast on this tour to Africa and help people. And I think even His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, the Dubai Rulers Organization, was involved. Sunny Varki, the GEMS founder. The Varki Foundation was involved. So I think that these collaborations are necessary. And thank you for watching, everyone. This has been a Smashi Business Show, a Smashi Business production, part of the Augustus Media Podcast Network. And a big shout out to our more than 2 million monthly listeners across all platforms. You make this possible. If you're one of them, we appreciate you. Have a great day. We will see you tomorrow.
Thank you.